Hello everyone and welcome back to the Ryan Retro channel. Today is a very exciting day because I'm extremely just giddy about this thing in my hands right now. And I really hope you're watching the video and not just listening with your earphones because that sounded really dodgy. But this is the MagicX One 35. This is a pretty revolutionary, groundbreaking handheld, I think, unless I'm completely forgetting something that released in the past. I'm sure the smart people in the comments will let me know all the handhelds I'm forgetting, but at least to my knowledge, this is something new. It's something that really excited me when I saw it online, and it's something that I'm really enjoying using in practice as well. So what makes this so special? Well, if you don't already know about it, you can probably just look at it closely right now, and you will see something a little bit strange. You will see some quite weird, peculiar things about the button layout on this device. I'm sure you're familiar with horizontal handhelds like the Retro Pocket G2 I have here. And I'm sure you're also familiar with vertical handhelds like the Retro Pocket Classic I have in my hands now. But the MagicX One 35 can function as both a horizontal handheld, but it can also be rotated around and played vertically because it has a second D-pad down here and even some hidden shoulder buttons on the right side and the left side. So just by rotating the handheld around, I'm now playing arcade games vertically, just like they were meant to be played. MagicX have been innovating a lot lately. In a scene where all the horizontal handhelds are beginning to look the same and all the vertical handhelds are also beginning to look the same, and there's nothing wrong with that because they're great form factors, it is refreshing to see a company do something different, just like they did with the MagicX 040, which is basically a 2DS machine, which is very cool. They really innovated with this one. Not so much with this one is just boring. But while this was really great as a 2DS vertical handheld, it wasn't really usable horizontally, and sometimes I wanted to use it horizontally, leading me to attach a telescopic controller to it in my previous review video. So MagicX have gone back to the drawing board and given us this, the MagicX One 35, which functions really well as a vertical handheld, just like this, and then can be simply rotated and can be used as a horizontal handheld just like this, and it's so quick and easy to just switch between the two. I think this is a fantastic little handheld, and it has to be said, it's also less than $100. I think it's around $85 at the time of filming, and it can play a surprising amount of systems. When I first saw this announced and when I first picked it up, considering how cheap and lightweight it is, I thought maybe it's your typical PlayStation 1 and lower device. But no, it can actually play PlayStation 2 and Gamecube games. I mean, it's not going to play the whole library, it's only going to run the easier games of those, but it is surprisingly capable. So for example, let's jump into a Dreamcast game like Crazy Taxi, the classic. And just like that, we are playing Dreamcast. The speaker is not bad, it's certainly loud enough. There's a really nice vibration in here as well, it's rumbling and pulsing a lot. And if you look at the frame counter up the top left, we are getting a pretty smooth 60 frames per second here in Crazy Taxi. And just before we get into the overall hardware tour and I talk more about everything, let me show you one more Dreamcast game, which is the one that I always test on these devices, and my favorite and most played Dreamcast game, Virtua Tennis 2. And this is the first time I've ever actually seen it come with one of these handhelds. All the games I'm showing you today were included on the SD card. I haven't added any more of my own, although you can simply do that by just connecting it to the computer. Virtua Tennis 2 is the game I usually use to stress test these cheap handhelds, the ones that usually only run up to around PS1 and maybe some light Dreamcast, because usually they cannot handle this game. But as you can see here, we're getting a smooth 60 frames per second. This is really encouraging. If you compare it to something like the TrimUI Brick, another cheap handheld that I absolutely adore, unfortunately here we don't have an FPS counter, and this video has also been recorded in 30 FPS, but I hope you can see this is running far less than 30 FPS. So I hope you're able to see how choppy this looks in comparison to the performance we're getting over here. So this was really impressive. But we can actually go even further beyond Dreamcast. So before we do that, let's now get into the little mini hardware tour and a software tour as well, and let me tell you all about this awesome little thing. So first of all, when it comes to size, it's quite a bit smaller than something like a Retroid Pocket 5 or a Retroid Pocket G2 that you may be familiar with if you've watched my channel before. In fact, it's almost just a little bit bigger than the screen of one of those devices. It's quite a little bit smaller. It is, however, pretty chunky. It's a chunky little boy. So let's compare it to some other things you may be familiar with. So for example, here is my phone next to this. And this is quite a large phone. It's a Samsung Fold 7. And you can see my phone is taller than this handheld. But once again, it is quite a bit thinner. This is a chunky little boy. I have this little notepad I've been using lately to scribble down some notes. And that's a little bit smaller, but quite comparable in size. And when I pick this up, it does feel like I'm holding kind of like a little notepad. It's got that girth, but it's pretty lightweight, coming in at 189 grams. So similar to a somewhat heavy phone. In the hands, it feels very nice and soft and light, does not feel heavy at all, thanks to its soft plasticky construction. As you will see, there are no kind of ergonomic bumps whatsoever like you see on some other handhelds that help to contour into your hand and make it a little bit more comfortable. We unfortunately don't have any of those here, but I think that's kind of unavoidable due to the fact that it has to transform into different shapes. Because handhelds that do have ergonomic bumps like this are super comfortable when you hold them that way, but if you were then to rotate it around, it would suddenly not be comfortable at all. So in order to transform in the way it does, I think it does need to be quite flat like this. Very Nintendo Switch-esque. So taking a look at the front of the device now, you have two identical D-pads. One at the top left for when you're using it in a traditional horizontal orientation, and then one at the bottom right for when you rotate this around, and it's then once again on the left to use like this in vertical orientation. I do think this is a bit uncomfortable down here because you really don't have anywhere to hold your hands. And if you then stretch your fingers up to these left and right shoulder buttons, which we'll look at in a moment, it becomes quite uncomfortable. You really just feel like you need a grip here that doesn't exist. So it's certainly not the most ergonomic, but you can definitely get the job done. It does function, it does work, it certainly does do the job, but it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. In the horizontal orientation, once again, there are no ergonomic grips, so it's not super comfortable this way either, but it's fine. The face buttons are the Xbox style red, yellow, blue and green ABXY buttons, and they're pretty nice. They feel pretty good. They're not too clicky or too spongy. They're right down the middle, totally vanilla, cheese and ham sandwich, nothing crazy, nothing unexpected, probably the best buttons on the device. You then have the start and select buttons, which are clickier and also pretty nice as well. The position of these also makes a lot of sense because it feels fine in horizontal mode and also makes a lot of sense in vertical mode too. So I do think they've done a good job there. The left analog stick has a surprising amount of travel for how low profile it is. It's almost like one of those low profile slider sticks that are designed to make something more pocketable, but it actually has a decent amount of travel. That's something I noticed about the MagicX 040 as well. It has a lot more travel and movement than you would expect, which is very welcome. If you were curious about changing the stick out, it is also interchangeable. It is the standard stick cap we see on all of these handhelds we're used to. So you could just go and grab a stick cap from the Odin 3 and stick that right on there and then have a much bigger stick cap to work with. And this honestly feels very nice. The larger stick cap just makes it feel like you get even more travel and precise control. So for the rest of the video, let's keep this stick cap on there just for fun. On the top of the device, you have your shoulder buttons. On the outsides, you have the L1 and R1 buttons, which are nice and easy to press. Further inside, you have the L2 and R2 buttons, and I do find these a little bit tricky to use. Because they are perfectly flush and in line with L1 and R1, and because they're quite deep inside the device, I do find them a little bit tricky to press. Now, MagicX have done something quite clever here by putting some shapes on them. So just with your finger, using your sense of touch, you can feel that this round shape is the 1 button and this rectangular shape is the 2 button. So it does help when you're feeling around, trying to feel what button to press. But these buttons, I think, are just a little bit too small. When you play games such as driving games that use these like triggers, and you basically need to hold them down the whole time, it does get a little bit uncomfortable having to have a death grip on such a tiny little button. So that is a shame, but again, it's not a massive deal breaker. It's okay. Up here you have the USB-C port. It supports power delivery 3.0 and recharges at around 8.8 watts. So not quite as fast as something like an Odin 3, which can charge at around 27 watts. But you will have no problems connecting modern power supplies with USB-C to C cables to charge this up, which is great because a lot of cheaper devices like the Trim UI Brick and the Miu Mini don't usually play very nicely with C to C cables and usually require older USB-A to C cables. So supporting power delivery 3.0 is very nice and means you shouldn't have any problems charging this up easily with whatever power supply you have lying around your home. As I've mentioned a few times now, you do have these extra shoulder buttons which are slightly angular just so your fingers can fit on them nicely. We have the right button there and the exact same left button on the other side. We do have a headphone jack, which is always nice to see, a speaker, down-firing speakers, which I'm not really a fan of. I always like front-firing speakers, although we will test them soon, and they do sound fine. We have the power button at the bottom, the volume buttons on the left-hand side, the SD card slot on the right-hand side, the G button that all MagicX devices have. Pressing one time will be the back button, and holding it down will be the Android home button. And then we have this little LED here, which will light up blue when the device is on, and show you when the battery needs to be charged, when the battery is dead, etc. This is an Android handheld, but MagicX are working on their own front end based on Daijisho, which they call Dawn. We first saw it here on the MagicX 040. It's a really nice way to jump into all your games quickly, while still being able to get into your Android apps as well. I always personally prefer Android over Linux because it has so many extra features and games available, but the stock Android experience like this has a lot more barrier to entry when it comes to launching your games. More experienced users will probably install their own front end like this, but for beginners it can be quite confusing to know which app I need to open, how I need to configure it, etc. Which is why Linux handhelds are preferred by many people, because you just turn it on and it's already completely set up to just play your games. So what MagicX are doing are combining both. When you first turn it on, you are in a game launcher ready to launch games, just like those Linux handhelds. But if you do want to get more into the weeds of Android, you could change this launcher to a traditional one. You could come over to the apps section here, go to the Play Store, sign into your Wi-Fi, install all your favorite apps and games. It's got the best of all worlds. For example, it comes with this basic file manager, but I was able to install my favorite file manager instead and use this for anything I would need to. It has Chrome built in, so I could access ryanretro.com or any of my other favorite websites. And one of my favorite features of Android handhelds compared to the competition is we can install utility apps that help us out. For example, most of these handhelds that are not OLED don't quite get dark enough at nighttime. This is the minimum brightness, and if my room was in the pitch black right now, this would be a little bit too bright. So I was able to just go to the Play Store, download the Darker app, and you can see that made things a lot darker. And I can even make it darker than this if I wish. So by being able to download an app that lets me customize brightness and other things like this, I get far greater control over my handheld compared to a Linux-based one, while still getting all the convenience of a built-in game launcher. So I'm really happy with what MagicX are doing, and I really hope they continue throwing out more and more handhelds that are innovative like this. I would also just like to see them make a really powerful handheld using this software that they've put together. So let's have a look at the software now. When you turn on the device for the first time, you'll be inside the Dawn launcher like this. Across the top we have Platforms, Chosen, Apps and Settings. So in the platform list, you have all the different systems you might want to play in alphabetical order. So you have your arcade games, your arcade machines, Dreamcast, Game Gear, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Gamecube, and it goes on and on. You're going to have everything up to Gamecube and PS2 here. You could of course just hit the A button to open the library and scroll through the game list. One thing that's really good about the Dawn launcher is it's very, very snappy. You can see even if I move down the list quickly, it loads the game art really, really fast. And if I hold my finger down, it doesn't load the new game art, but we are speeding through that game list. Look at that. You can also use L1 and R1 to page through a little bit faster. If you find a game you like, you can of course press A to play it, press B to go back, all simple stuff. If you press X on a game, it will add it to your favorites. You'll see that little heart illuminating, so that will be easy to get to later. And if you press Y on a game, it will bring up the settings, where we can set the CPU mode, the emulator core, change the name, change the art, delete the game, and change the screen rotation, which is something unique to this device because, of course, we have the opportunity to turn it around. You can choose whether you want that game to be horizontal or vertical. If we come out of that game, we can actually also change the entire system as well. Again, you can change the default CPU mode and emulator core for the system. Here is an easy way to add a RetroArch overlay if you have any installed. You can enable integer scaling for the games too. And once again, you can change the screen rotation. So I have set my Nintendo DS games to all launch vertically with 2 screens on top of each other like this, just like on the MagicX 040. This screen rotation option is only available in some systems, only the ones that would make sense to be vertical. For other systems, for example, the NES, which is only going to be horizontal, you'll see it doesn't even have that option for rotation, which makes a lot of sense, but I would kind of like if it was there because I'm a control freak. Outside of the game library and the settings, we also have a couple more icons. The heart icon is your favorites. So as you go through and add some games to your favorites using the X button, you can then just view only your favorites here. So this is a quick way to see your favorite games for each system and jump into them. Next to that is this little time button, and that shows the games you recently played. So I was recently playing Sonic the Hedgehog as usual, so this is a way to quickly jump back into your recently played games on that system. If we now use the R2 button, we can change page up here from platform to chosen. And this is where you can view your favorite games from every system in a nice easy list, and your recently played games for every system as well. So it's a quick way to get back into a game you want to play. It's also where you can access all of your games if you just want to scroll through everything and maybe search for a game. And you can search for a game just by hitting the start button. When you start a search, it will automatically be on whatever system you were playing last. So you're going to need to use the L1 and R1 buttons to go over to all games, unless you are searching for a specific game. And despite the fact that this device is a touchscreen, it doesn't really let you use the touchscreen to search. When you hit a letter, it will highlight the letter instead of inputting it. So you actually need to hit every letter twice, which is not the end of the world, but it's quite annoying. So I can search for Sonic, confirm, and now it will show all of the games that have Sonic in the title. I can go through, add them to my favorites, or of course, if I want to, I can play them. Unfortunately, my usual sound test, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, is not on this device, so we're going to use Sonic the Hedgehog 1 instead. So let me turn the volume all the way up, and let's see what it sounds like. So as you can hear, it's very loud. It doesn't sound the best, but this is Android, so we have lots of options for EQ. We can install plenty of different EQ applications, and we could get something quite good sounding, I'm sure. But regardless, it sounds okay. I also have to say, this Odin stick feels phenomenal on here. I'm never putting this original stick back ever again. This feels really nice. When you quit out of a game, you will see it launches this game launcher. This is something I've enabled in the settings. I think it's disabled by default. It lets you freely switch through all the recently played games and jump back into them. It's based on the game launcher from the Mii Mini series. This game launcher in Mii Mini is absolutely beautiful because when you quit out of a game, it remembers exactly where you were. And when you launch back into the game, you are straight back into your previous save file, ready to carry on right where you left off. And if I close the game again, it remembers my location. The implementation here on the MagicX, however, doesn't have that quick save and quick resume feature. It simply just remembers the games you recently played and puts them on a nice little list here. But if I were to jump back into a game, it's just going to take me back to the beginning. I'm going to have to use save states and load where I was before by bringing up the save state screen, loading the state just like that. It's not going to actually remember where I was automatically. So this implementation is not quite as good as the one on the Mii Mini, but nevertheless, it's nice to have it. So let's now page over to the next option, apps. This is where all your Android apps will live. So think of this section just like your normal Android app launcher. You can come through here and launch all your other applications. You can page along to emulators, games, and tools. Although I did find in many cases, games are not automatically classified as games. You're actually going to need to come along to the game, press Y to bring up the settings, and actually classify that it's a game. If I do that to this Minecraft game and check the games box, now when we move over to the games list, Minecraft is right there and ready to play. Now I didn't really like the way Minecraft runs here on this device. This is Minecraft from the Play Store, But because this is Android, we have so many options. So I downloaded Pojav Launcher, the one that comes by default on Retroid devices, and I have Minecraft running on here. Now it's not perfect because unfortunately I cannot move the screen without a right stick. So I actually need to put my finger on the screen to rotate. So in this case, I'm basically using the screen as the right stick, which is not optimal. I would really love to use this D-pad as the right stick, but I haven't found a way to be able to do that. That's something I need to look into more. Balatro runs really well on here as well. This is the version I got from my phone. I just extracted the APK from my phone and sent it over. How did I send it over? Well, because it's Android, I used my favorite app, Local Send, which lets me freely send anything over Wi-Fi. Whether it's from my phone, my MacBook, my work computer, even my Android TV, I can just send anything easily. So once again, another big benefit that this is running Android. I think it was a great decision by MagicX to put Android on this thing, so I can quickly and easily send over APK files or anything else I might want to use. So nice easy games like Balatro and Stardew Valley are going to run perfectly on here. I did try some more demanding Android games like Acecraft. I thought this would be a good one because it's a vertical game and we could use the vertical controls, but unfortunately it just could not handle it. And now it doesn't even open at all. So we're going to really need to stick to the lighter games here. I mean, this is a sub $100 little plastic handheld. It's not going to be a Fortnite machine. So what kind of systems can we play here? Well, of course we can play some Game Boy Advance. The MagicX One 35 has a 3x2 screen, so Game Boy Advance perfectly fills up the screen here and looks fantastic. We can play Nintendo 64 games, which run really nicely here. PSP looks pretty nice here, with only very slight pillar boxing at the top and bottom, but certainly not too noticeable, especially on the nice all-black unit I have here. It's a pretty comfortable little PSP machine with the option to use both the D-pad and the analog stick as you wish. PlayStation 2 is also playable, but it will depend on the title. In Grand Theft Auto San Andreas here, it's not the best experience. It's quite laggy and doesn't really run that great. But once again, this is an Android device, so we could get the Netflix version of San Andreas, which I'm sure would run much better. But while it's not perfectly smooth and doesn't run great, it does run. So you are able to get some PS2 games running, and some lighter titles will work pretty nicely here. For example, here's Pro Evolution Soccer 2, and if I pick my favorite team, London, and make sure all my favorite players are playing, like Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, and Oranges 62, it runs quite smoothly. There are some slowdowns here and there now and again, but for the most part we are able to achieve a smooth 50 frames per second that this PAL ROM defaults to, and that's without any tweaks. I've not made any changes here. I'm sure if I go through the settings and change some of them, we could get better performance. But as it is, it's working pretty well. Gamecube is going to be a similar story. Here we seem to be downscaled quite a bit. This is potato quality, but it is working. Again, the frame rate is mostly 60 frames per second, which I would hope it was, considering we're in 144p by the look of it. The problem with Gamecube is going to be that a lot of Gamecube games relied on the C stick, using the right analog stick for a lot of movements in game, and we of course don't have one here. We do have a D-pad, but I cannot find a way to make this act as a right stick. And if that isn't implemented yet, I really hope MagicX can implement a way to make this right D-pad act like a right stick, because that would help in so many games. Without this right stick available, many Gamecube games are not going to be playable, unfortunately. Which is why when you browse the library here of the included Gamecube games, they're almost entirely shooting games. Side-scrolling games that don't require right stick camera movement, which makes a lot of sense. I did want to test my favorite Gamecube game, Ace Golf, like I usually test in my videos here, but that game is all about the right stick. You need the right stick to swing the club, and a golf game without swinging a club is not much of a golf game, so I unfortunately couldn't test that, and I decided for this video, I'm just only going to test games that are included with this SD card. And there are a lot of them, and it's a pretty good selection. So that is about the extent of what we can play on here when it comes to power. Let's now look at situations where you might want to turn it around and use it vertically and make use of that feature. The most obvious one will be arcade games. A lot of those old arcade cabinets were vertical. So let's jump into a game like Air Attack, for example. I just chose this randomly from the included SD card games. And as you can see, I now have a really nice vertical setup to play one of these classic vertical shooting games. And it's a lot of fun. The only issue I have, like I said earlier, is without anywhere to put my hands around here, I can't really figure out the optimal way of holding it. I find myself shifting my hands around, trying to figure out where I'm meant to be holding onto. If you put your fingers here on these triggers, then it becomes quite obvious to hold it like this. But I found that a lot of these games don't really utilize triggers, so I want to find a more comfortable way of cradling the device, and it's just a little bit tricky. It doesn't feel very natural, but it is quite fun. And it's because of this feature that I don't think is only a gimmick. I think it is a pretty cool feature. It's because of this that I would encourage you to think about picking one of these up. And I'm not trying to just shill my affiliate link. You don't have to use my affiliate link if you don't want to. I really do think this is a pretty cool little handheld. It's something different, it's something innovative, and it's just nice to use something that is a little bit different to what we're accustomed to seeing every time. This is not going to replace all your other handhelds. It's not going to be your best handheld you've ever used, but it's just so interesting and so fun and quirky. Here is a 3DS game, which doesn't run perfectly on here. DS does run pretty well. And you're probably used to playing it like this, with a big screen at the top and a tiny little screen at the bottom or on the side, or maybe split screen left and right, or maybe flicking between screens. But because this is a convertible transformer handheld, we can slide down from the top of the screen, hit rotate mode, 90 degrees, and we can play it like this with a lot more real estate. Look at the difference there. Although one problem with this is it's still mapped to the old controls. And this is a problem I'm experiencing a lot with this device. They don't seem to have completely nailed the quick, smooth, fluid transfer of button input yet. You still find yourself a lot of the time trying to control something one way, but it's still mapped the other way. And I think that's because we're just using so many different apps. I think the games that use RetroArch are quite good at adapting in this way, but this game, for example, is using Azaha. So for this one, I believe we're going to need to come into the Azaha settings and manually change everything, which is a bit of a shame. When it comes to the device's battery life, I haven't tested it extensively with a timer or anything like that like I have for previous reviews. I will do more testing in the future, but the battery life is okay. It's not the best battery life in the world, but it's also not terrible. I would say you'd probably get around 5 or so hours out of this, just like you would with most other handhelds. It's a pretty reasonable battery life, and as I showed earlier in the video, it's easy to recharge it with any kind of cable you might have lying around. So what do I think about this device overall? Well, I think this is really fun. I don't think it's going to replace my other devices as my main handheld that I play all of my games on, because it just doesn't have that kind of power. I have seen some other YouTubers trying some light Switch games on this, which is something I'm definitely going to have to get involved in because that's the way I am. But I would view this as a device that plays up to Dreamcast and some Gamecube, PS2, and maybe some light Switch games, and I mean extremely light to the maximum. Don't expect anything there. But if you think of it as light PS2, light Gamecube, and down, it's a pretty good device. And when you consider you can get this for about $85, the fact that you have that quirky little switchable, transforming-like ability, I think this is a really cute little pickup, and I would recommend trying one out. If $85 is accessible for you, I think it's a great little one to pick up and just add to your collection. I actually ordered one of these myself the moment I saw it. With those 2 D-pads, that transforming quality, I ordered it right away. I then completely forgot that I ordered it and got offered this one as a review unit, which I accepted. Then after I received this review unit and got ready to make a video, I received my retail version in the mail. So I now have 2 of these. So I'll be doing a giveaway of one of these soon, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel to check that out, because I now have 2 of them. And of course I don't need 2, so I will be giving a new one away to a lucky viewer who likes, subscribes, and comments on the channel. Thank you so much everyone for watching and for sticking with me throughout 2025, and I'm so excited for a really exciting 2026 with the Retroid Pocket 6 coming out soon. I hope you found this video interesting, useful, helpful, or positive in some kind of way. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll have an affiliate link in the description if you would like to to pick one up and support me in the process. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.